it's time for you to come on in the room. Come on, Saints and Eights. Come on in the room. It's time for Free Me Friday. Tell your sneaky link you ain't coming today, right, Pinky? She said, right. Listen, I need you to come in the room. This is episode 1. And you know how, I mean, the only right way to start off episode 1 is an intro of moi. Because everybody know who I is. Everybody know who I is. You might follow me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and maybe familiar with the testimony, maybe familiar with my ministry. But there is somebody that's scrolling on the YouTuberations or scrolling on social media, and I popped up on your newsfeed, and you probably like, who is that lady with that red wig on? I don't know who that is. Well, allow me to introduce myself. First of all, let me introduce my co-host. This is Pinky, my homegirl. Don't make me bring out Pinky. All right? That is my co-host, and I am your girl, Apostle Danielle Williams McCourt. I'm an apostle. I know I'm a little ignorant, but I really am an apostle in the Lord's church. I have been in ministry for a whole 15 years. I was pastoring for 4 years. But before I was ever anybody's pastor, before I was anybody's apostle, and before I gave God a real yes, I was a stripper, judge or pediatrician. I was in the porn industry, y'all. Judge your auntie. I was busting it wide and spreading it low all across America before the Lord came and found me. So when I tell you that I have a testimony, listen. No disrespect to anybody be like, I want to testify of being healed from asthma. Shout out to you and your lungs, okay? I ain't no disrespect to anybody that be like, the Lord paid my light bill. Shout out to you. I would have burnt them candles. I'm not disrespecting anybody's testimony, but when I say I have a testimony, I have a real testimony. I do not look like what I've been through. And so before we get into that, this is why Free Me Friday is so important. If you're just now tuning in, I made my introduction of who I am. But also what Free Me Friday is so important to me, because we going to get free from the things that keep us in bondage, or we're going to testify of the freedom that the Lord has brought us into from things that had a stronghold over us. And so that's what Free Me Friday is. It's a platform where we are going to get real, raw, relevant, a little ratchet, and a whole lot of religious, okay? Because I love the Lord. If you don't like it, devil, too bad, okay? So, Free Me Friday was birthed from another part of my ministry. But again, before I jump into all that, I just told you my business, didn't I? Didn't I just told you I was spreading it wide, spreading it low and busting it wide in the porn industry. And I was a stripper before I ever had some anointment. Before I ever had a title, I was out there in the world, okay? And most times when I tell people, or when you, not just me, but when people hear of a woman who was in the sex industry, the first thing that comes to mind is something negative, like, ugh, she's dirty, she's nasty, I would never wife her, I would never, yeah, your mama was doing the same thing, she just didn't have a camera in front of her, truth be told, Medea and them was doing it, they was throwing it back in the shack, you know what I'm saying? But there was no cameras and no social media and no OnlyFans and no porn sets back in them days, you know what I'm saying? So a lot of women got away with a lot of stuff, but then when it came to women like me, when it was broadcasted, us being in that type of environment, sex industry, sex work, and it was known from videos, music videos, from porn movies, from strip clubs, from magazines, and all of that. I was involved in all of that, and a lot of times we get a negative stigma. We get a bad rap, right? Because a lot of times you see a person's now without ever realizing their why. A lot of times we judge people's now, we judge their decision now, but we have no idea what got them there. And so I want to go down that road for all you judgmental jellybacks that are watching this, that always wants to put your mouth on somebody. If you ain't gonna pray, shut up. Because last time I checked, the Lord was the Alpha and the Omega, which means he knows the beginning and the end and the middle. And a lot of times we see somebody's beginning, we even see their ending, but we have no idea their middle. Only God knows. And so, before you put your mouth on people because they're living a negative lifestyle, if you're not invested in their why, just shut your mouth, because you don't know what God is going to do in their life. I never thought when I was swinging around them poles that God was going to take me from the pole to the pulpit, from the porn set to the pulpit. I never knew that, and those around me did not know that either. But wow, ta-da, watch out now. Here I am. And so again, before I was the apostle, I was in the porn industry. Before I was preaching, I was stripping. But before I did any of those things, I was a little girl, y'all. I was a little girl who mother and father was married. So I was born into a two-parent household. However, that two-parent household was extremely toxic. My mother and father was extremely abusive toward one another. And so my mother was like, hey, check this out. You ain't going to keep going upside my head. So she left. And a lot of times when the mom leaves, the children normally go with her. But in my case, it was a little bit unique because I stayed with my dad. I was a daddy's girl, so my dad said, listen, you can leave, but my daughter stays here. And I loved that. I loved my daddy. However, daddy had some problems. My father was an alcoholic. My father was a womanizer, and he was very abusive. I watched my dad rotate different women in our house. He had different women around, and he was extremely abusive towards those women. And as a little girl, I thought it was normal for men to treat women like this because, you know, if daddy's doing it, it has to be okay. And so I want to pause right there and tell every parent that's watching this who don't believe that your children know or your children are aware of what's going on, they watching. And they are like sponges, and they're soaking it up. The positive that you give them as well as the negative that you put out. Them kids, all they know is you. You are their everything, and whatever you're doing, they're going to roll with it. And so again, I thought that it was normal for a man to treat a woman like this because this is what my daddy was doing. But he was a full-time father. I always say he was a great dad, horrible man. Great dad, horrible man. However, just like most parents, he had to go to work, and because he went to work and he was a single dad, he would drop me off at a babysitter's house. And this babysitter had a teenage son. And when she would leave the house, she would leave him in charge of all the kids. Now, mind you, it was multiple kids there. But for whatever reason, me, her, she happened to be his pick. And when his mom would leave, he would take me into his bedroom where he would molest me. I don't know how deep we can get on these YouTuberations because I don't want them to try to, you know what I'm saying, take it down. But use your imagination. He would do things that he wasn't supposed to do to me while his mother was gone. So I was molested. I went through sexual abuse at the hands of my babysitter son. I never told anybody. I never, ever, ever told my father. I never told his mother what was happening to me, because if you've ever been violated, then you understand an abuser's objective is to instill fear in their victims. And we're going to get into a lot of that stuff as we move forward in these shows. What happens when your abuser silences you. But that ain't for right now. That ain't for right now. So I was silenced. I didn't say anything. That happened at 8 years old. When I turned 10, again, great dad, horrible father. I end up finding out what mental health looked like. I know we don't talk about that in the black community as much as we should, but there's a lot of African Americans who deal with mental health issues. I mean, really cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, okay? Tyrone, Shaniqua, you need help, okay? And so my father ended up getting diagnosed with bipolar disorder as well as schizophrenia, and he was an alcoholic. When you mix medication and alcohol, sometimes that is a recipe for disaster, okay? And so my father had what you called a psychotic outbreak, and he beat me halfway to death. He beat me with a wooden paddle and the belt buckle of a belt. He did this for hours, and if that wasn't bad enough, he then tried to drown me in a bathtub. I still never really got the help that I deserved. I still never really got any type of counseling or any resolutions to the abuse. I just kept on going. Like a lot of us, we go through traumatic things and we just keep on going, y'all. We just keep on trucking, which again is a recipe for disaster. So, who cares? I kept going. Ended up being 12 years old, now back in LA with my mother. And, she my girl now. Y'all will see her later. That's my girl. I love her to death. However, at that time, we didn't have the best relationship because, again, I was a daddy's girl. She left, and I was with my dad, and that's all that I knew. And so, um, I was rebellious. I was staying outside. I didn't really want to be in the house. I was going through all of those things, different emotions and stuff like that, trying to get to know my mom. And it wasn't, I ain't do too good with that. And so, anywho, one day I remember I got out of school early. I was 12 years old, and there was a neighbor who lived across the street, a family friend, Uncle so-and-so. You know how we go through all of those things. And I was sitting outside my house, and this man who I was familiar with invited me into his home. When he invited me into his home, I did not have any reservation. There was not any red flags because, again, I saw this man every day. He spoke to my stepfather and my mother every morning. And I was comfortable with him, only to find out that I was walking in the house of a predator. And so this man who I trusted, who had been a family friend, raped me at 12 years old. Again, never telling anybody about my trauma. I just kept on going. A year later, I turned 13, and I was actually at a bus stop getting ready to go home. I had just got my hair done. Just got my hair braided. And I was saying, all my LA people, if you know about Figueroa, then you know that is the whole stroll. I mean, they out there selling it. You hear me? And I didn't know what was going on. I was just at the bus stop trying to go home. I thought I was cute because I just got my hair braided. And I was just trying to go home, not realizing that I was in the Shark Tank, okay? And so there was this car that pulled up, this champagne Lexus to be exact. He pulled into the gas station behind that bus stop, and he walked up to me. When I say he was fine, that man was fine. And a lot of us are stupid because when we see fine people, we get dumb, right? And so at 13 years old, I see this grown man approaching me as fine as he was, and I thought I was something because I was just as green as can be. And I thought I was hot stuff, only to realize that he was a pimp. He was a pimp, and he saw me as prey. I still didn't know what was going on. Gave him my number. We were talking a few times, and then next thing I know, I jumped out the window. Put some bars on y'all kids' windows, because they be jumping out the window. And when y'all go to sleep and y'all be drunk at night and y'all pass out, or y'all at work, they leave the house, okay? Because I was leaving the house. So I jumped out the window to go see this man. And this man happened to be a 27-year-old pimp that I ended up doing the oochie coochie with one time. I got pregnant. For all you youngins that are watching this that do not believe, and not even young people, because old people are stupid too. You do the oochie coochie one time, you can get pregnant. One time, and it took me one time, and bloop, pregnant, 13, by a 27-year-old pimp whose intentions was just to use me to make money for him. As slow as I was, I had enough sense not to do that. He could not get me to do that, but he had impregnated me already. I went through some time hiding my pregnancy at 13 years old. I hid it because as a child, you think if you ignore something, it'll go away. That's how I thought. If I just act like it's not here, if I act like it's not happening, it's going to go away. But that's not how life works, right? So my belly kept growing. It kept growing. And then I finally decided that, you know what? I'm going to have my baby. The day I decided to have my child, I went into a clinic where I was getting ready to get prenatal care because I was about 6 months pregnant now with no prenatal vitamins, with no prenatal care, nothing. So I decided that I was going to get prenatal care, and my water broke in that clinic. I stood up only to find that I had water and blood dripping down my legs. Ambulance came, rushed me to a hospital where I ended up giving birth to my son, who happened to be 1 pound, 2 ounces. And that little boy died in my arms after a few hours after giving birth. And that was the turning point, ladies and gentlemen. Everything that I had went through at 8 years old by the babysitter son, everything that I went through with my father at 10, everything that I went through at 12 years old by the neighbor, all of the stuff that I tried to suppress and sweep under the rug had now surfaced. And the same little girl that walked into that hospital wasn't the same little girl that came out. I was angry, I was bitter, I was hurt, I was pissed, and I was broken because I watched my child take his last breath. And so that was 5 days before my 14th birthday. 5 days before my 14th birthday. Um, and I turned into a little terrorist. I didn't want to listen. I didn't want to hear nothing. I was angry. Pause. Again, if you have children who are okay, or they were good kids, and then all of a sudden they start acting a plumb fool, they start being disrespectful, they start acting out. 9 times out of 10, they ain't just bad kids. They're acting out because something took place and they don't know how to tell you that they were violated or that they went through some form of trauma. They can't voice that, and so they start acting out in other ways like I did. And so I ran away from home at 14 years old, only to find myself at the house of another pimp, a drug dealing pimp, who the dynamics was a little different. The first man, I thought that he was my man, and I liked him, and we were involved with each other, and I liked him, and I slept with him willingly. This man, I thought he was my friend, and I thought he was just helping me out, which he did. He started off like that. But I realized that he had a dark secret, and his secret happened to be that he didn't only sell dope, but he got high off his own supply. You hear that, Pinky? Don't get high on your own supply. Don't do that. You hear me? Don't get high. All you drug dealers, all you pill poppers, all you dopes, like don't you get high on your own supply. Pinky said, don't do it. You should be selling dope anyway, by the way. I'm not advocating for drug dealing, but if you're going to sell the dope, don't do the dope. Because he would do the dope and he would turn into a monster. I would call him Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, because when he was sober, he was so nice. But when he started doing that dope, he turned into the devil. And he would beat the crap out of me. He would beat me so bad. And again, he was a dope dealer, so there was a customer that he had. This young lady would come and she would buy drugs from him, and she saw me all beat up and bruised, and she felt bad for me, so she decided to invite me to the strip club with her so that I could make my own money to get away from my abuser. A lot of people would be like, why would she tell a little girl to start dancing? In her eyes, she thought that she was helping me. She thought she was saving me out of an abusive situation, and technically she did, because I started dancing in the nightclub at 14 years old. Again, I'm from LA. We can get our hands on anything, so I got a fake ID and I started dancing in the nightclubs at 14 years old just to get enough money to not get beat on by this man. Got in the clubs, and she was right. I started making my own money. I started doing my own thing, only to realize there's some grown folk activities that goes down in the strip club. In the words of Ebony from Players Club, I just came to dance for y'all. I just came to dance. They didn't want me to dance. They cared about me dancing. They wanted me to dance right on they, you know what, okay? And so I said, no, abort. I don't want to do the oochie coochie in the champagne room. I couldn't do it, y'all. I didn't want to do it with your granddaddy in the champagne room. So I said, the helicopter with the strip club. I left the strip club. I left the strip club, right? And things started looking good. I went to Compton, California with my grandparents. Shout out to them. I got a real granny and grandfather who are from Birmingham, Alabama. They are Southern Baptists, and if you was going to be in their house, you had to go to church. And I was so churched, I was churched out, okay? We was at church every day, all day. I was sick of church. But I figured if I was going to be there as much as I was, I might as well do something that I enjoyed. And at that time, I used to, me. I used to like to sing a little bit. So I joined the youth choir. Not only did I join the youth choir, I got back in school. I got me a summer job. I left all that stuff alone with the rebellious and with the rebelling and running away and doing what I wanted to do and acting a fool. I had structure now. I was back into a two-parent household. They introduced God to me because I don't believe my mama ever took me to church, and I don't believe my daddy ever took me to church. I didn't know church until I got with my grandparents. They gave me Jesus, and I was feeling all right about it, right? So I was singing in the choir, doing well for myself, and then here comes Satan. My choir member, my homegirl, my spiritual sister, introduces me to prostitution. How did she do that? Because she knew I danced. And she said, well, you ain't got to stay with your grandparents. You can move with me, and I dance too, and we can dance together, and you can stay with me, and we can get our money. And it's funny. I ran into two pimps that could not get me to do this. But the moment I ran into somebody that I felt safe with, when I ran into the house of God, because we don't believe there's any predators in the pews and the pulpit, right? Stay tuned for that episode. The predators be right there on the pew and the pulpit, and she got me, okay? Because we was singing in the pulpit, and she got me. The pimps couldn't get me. The actual men could not get me to do anything like that. But somebody that I trusted in the house of God, my spiritual sister, my accountability partner, my choir member, my church girl, is the one that got me to say yes to something so detrimental. Because when we trust people, or when you come into relationship with people, especially in the house of God, I think you let your guards down a little bit, and that's why people become church hurt, because we never expect those that's in the house of God to be the predators, but it's a reality that they are, right? And so my choir member introduces me to prostitution. Not only did she introduce me to prostitution, but she also introduced me to drugs. And so at 15, 16, 17 years old, I was dancing. We did start dancing. I started back dancing. I was prostituting. I was addicted to drugs, and my drug of choice was ecstasy and cocaine. I became an alcoholic, and I did this throughout my teenage years, 15, 16, 17 years old. One night I was in the strip club making my money, and there was some porn stars that happened to walk in. And yes, I knew who they was because the saints be watching porn. Yeah, some of y'all watching me now. Yeah. Let me see your search history, because y'all be watching the Oochie Coochie. Okay? And I was watching, and I knew who they was. And I just went over there real innocently to say, hey, girl, how you doing? How your mama doing? I know you. You know what I'm saying? You nasty, you little freak, nasty freak mama. How you doing, girl? I seen your work. And that conversation changed my life. There was one young lady who looked me up and down. I mean, she checked me out. You know what I'm saying? Always been a little cute, you know what I'm saying? So she was checking me out. And she said, if you think you're making money now, you haven't seen anything yet. I made $30,000 in 1 month from doing porn movies. A what? A what? Did you say $30,000? Hold on, what? $30,000! She said $30,000 from doing movies. Where you sign me up at is what I said. I said, where you sign me up at? Not realizing the latter consequences. Not realizing, hey, what happens if you become a mother? What happens if you become a wife? What happens if your grandmama see you busting your cheeks open on the camera? Ew. I didn't think about that, because money was the motivation. The Bible says the love of money is the root of all evil. Not having money, not getting money, but when you love it so much that you're willing to sell your soul for it, that's when it becomes evil. And so I was like, hey, I'm stripping, I'm prostituting. What's going to hurt if we put a camera on there? Little did I know, it turned it up a whole nother level. I started doing movies at 18 years old, still technically a senior in high school. I started doing movies, and I was introduced to these porn stars who lived like this rock star lifestyle. And she was right. I started making real money. I started making legit money. They actually give you W-2s and checks, and you got to sign paperwork and all this, the independent contract. I mean, it was a real business. And I started making money that I hadn't made before. I met one of my best friends today. You'll see her one day on one of these episodes. I met one of my best friends on a porn set who happened to be one of those celebrity chicks. Her clientele were celebrities, ball players, rappers, actors, people of that nature. And so now I'm hanging out with celebrities. I'm sleeping with celebrities. I'm getting paid by celebrities. I'm getting flued out by the celebrities. So everything she told me was correct. My lifestyle changed, my money changed, but I almost died. My drug habit increased. My alcohol intake increased. I could not get out the bed without taking a shot. I was going through 2, 3 ecstasy pills. I was on coke all day because Mark, I believe 8:36. Correct me if I'm wrong. But it says, "What profit is it to a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul?" And that's exactly what I was living. I was gaining the world. I was gaining the materialistic things. I was able to buy what I wanted to buy, fly where I wanted to fly, do what I wanted to do, and I was dying on the inside because I could not understand why I would make a decision to get this low. And it's low. Whether you're doing porn, whether you on OnlyFans, whether you are stripping in the clubs, whether you are on the corner, whether you are in the DMs selling your body, it is low for any woman. No woman of character will ever go this low. And I could not understand why in the helicopter did I make this decision. And the only way for me to be able to live with myself and do what I was doing is if I was high and drunk at all times. And that resulted into 3 overdoses, alcohol poison. I almost died several times behind drugs and alcohol. I was not in my right mind. It was so bad that I started seizing to the point they took my driver's license. But who cares? Because I got to do the porn, right? Who cares? Because I got to go meet this man and get. Who cares? Because I got to get on the pole. So it didn't matter that it was killing me because I had a bag to go get. And because I was told that I would never be more than what I was, I decided that if I was going to be a HOE, I was going to be the best one out there, right? And I just decided, hey, this is what it is, and this is what it's going to be. And as a result of that lifestyle, there were men who would fly me out to different places. And one particular man contacted me. I was in LA at the time. He was in New York. And he propositioned me, and I got up and I packed my bags and I headed to New York, a place that I always wanted to go. And this man portrayed to be something he was not, only for it to be a complete nightmare for me. When I got to New York, this man wined and dined me for the first 3 days, like most clients do. But then he became upset with me, and this man decided that he was going to kill me. He snatched me out of a club in Manhattan and took me to this old raggedy house that had a basement. Now, mind you, I'm from the West Coast. We ain't got no basements. I had never seen a basement in my life. And he took me into this basement that was set up like something out of a horror movie, where he locked me up into this room, and he raped me, and he beat me, and he was a man from the islands, and he chanted voodoo over me, and he told me over and over again, "I am going to kill you." And ladies and gentlemen, he was not lying. I believed with all of my soul that he was going to do exactly what he told me he was going to do. Because as a result of being out there in them streets, I have been through many of things. I've been raped, I've been robbed, I've been kidnapped by pimps, I've been jumped, I've been through all the stuff, held at gunpoint, all of that type of stuff out there in Hollywood, right? But nothing could have prepared me for this. Nothing that I had experienced was as dark and as evil and sadistic as this. And when they say your life flashes before your eyes, they ain't lying. I seen my little life I seen me as a little girl. I was like, yo, I'm in New York, but my grandparents ain't gonna never see me again. They didn't know what I was doing. Because some people say, well, did your family know you was, you know what I'm saying, busting it low like that? No, they did not. They only knew that Danielle always had a boyfriend with money. Nobody knew I was stripping. Nobody knew I was doing porn. Nobody knew I was escorting. They just knew I met dudes with a whole lot of money. So they wouldn't even know where to look for my body if this man killed me and chopped me up in his backyard. And so my life flashed before my eyes as I was left in that basement for hours and hours and hours out of the day. But because My grandparents gave me Jesus. Something in me said, pray, Danielle. And I prayed like I never prayed before. Because again, although I lived an alternative lifestyle, I still stayed in church. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I would leave the pole and go to church. Yes, I would leave the porn sets and go to church. Yes, I would sleep with your daddy and go to church. I stayed in church all while I was doing the oochie coochie around the United States of America. Because my grandparents gave me Jesus, and I just held on to Jesus because I knew Jesus, and I didn't care what you had to say about it. And I thank God that those seeds were being planted in me, even though I was living an alternative lifestyle. That's why you got to watch who you put your mouth on, because there may be a prostitute sitting behind you on the pew. There may be a transsexual sitting behind you on the pew. There may be a murderer sitting behind you on the pew, but you never know what God is doing on the inside of them. And so even though I was doing all the stuff that I was doing, I remained in the house of God. And something in me said, pray, Danielle. And I prayed like I never prayed before. And I said, Lord, if you get me out of this, I'll change my life for you. Please don't let me die. 3 days later, that's why the number 3 is my favorite number to this day. 3 days later, that man's friend came downstairs looking for him, but he found me. He found me all distorted, all beat up and bruised, looking like I was out of my mind, because I was. And I didn't know if he was part of the plan. I didn't know if this was a scheme that Todd set up. I didn't know what was going on. I thought he was in on the Freddy Krueger stuff. But he was just as shocked to see me as I was to see him. And God used that man to get me out of that basement. And I was able to get from New York back to LA, and I never looked back. Now, ministry was never, ever, 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 ever a part of my plan, because ain't nobody said all that. Now, God, I didn't tell you to do all this. You know what I'm saying? All I said was, if you get me out of this, I'm going to change my life, which meant for me, I'm going to get out the game. I'm going to get me a job. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to get in the church. I'm going to live right. Because being a Christian, for all of y'all that are hungry for a platform, that's another episode, but we're going to just talk about that for just a quick second. All y'all that's hungry for a mic and a platform, baby, you can have it, because it's a lot that come with this here. It's a lot that come with this here, and I didn't want that. I just wanted to live for God, but God had other plans for my life, and I'm so glad he did, because when I started telling my testimony of going from porn to the pulpit, coming out of that lifestyle and giving God a real yes, there were thousands of men and women, young and old, who my testimony saved them out of a perverted pit. The same stuff that I was involved in, not just porn, not just prostitution, not just escorting, because somebody watching me now may say, listen, I've never done porn, I never stripped, but I can relate to the domestic violence. I can relate to the mental health, dealing with a parent. I can relate to being violated. I can relate to not having a good relationship with my mother or my father. It's something in my story that you can see yourself in. It don't have to be porn. It don't have to be prostitution. But there's nothing that I haven't gone through that does not stand out to somebody else who is fighting their own demons. And so I saw how my testimony was freeing thousands of people. Literally, I'm not exaggerating. Thousands of people, nationally and internationally. God was using me to be embarrassed. Let's talk about it. Be embarrassed of telling people. It's not easy telling folks you was a hoochie coochie mama. It's not easy telling folks you was doing porn. It's not easy telling folks you was a prostitute. But he used my shame to set other people free while setting me free. And here we have Free Me Fridays. And I'm gonna get into more, because it's so much to me. So this doesn't have to be the only introduction of who I am, because there's so much to me. But I wanted you to know where this platform was birthed from. Where did it come from? Why are we talking about Free Me Friday, another podcast? Ain't we tired of podcasts? I know I'm tired of podcasts. Ain't you tired of podcasts? Everybody got a podcast. Everybody got something to say. Ain't that right, Pinky? Everybody want to talk. She said yes, and we tired of it. Shut up! Because we don't want to hear what you got to say all the time, because some of y'all ain't saying the right thing. And so when the Lord said do this podcast, I said absolutely not, because everybody and their daddy doing podcasts. He said, but I need you to do a podcast so folks can get free on a Friday. Because there are some people that will never walk in a church building, but there's somebody scrolling on YouTuberations. There's somebody scrolling on social media who needs to be free from something that has held them captive for years, whether it's sexual perversion, whether it's promiscuity, whether it's an absent father, drugs, alcohol, witchcraft, whatever it is. I need you to birth this platform, and I need you to be real, I need you to be raw, and I need you to be relevant, because there are some Christian bases. This is a faith base. Don't get it twisted. Now hold up, swole up. Don't get it twisted, okay? Because we're going to be real ignorant around here. We're going to laugh, we're going to clown, but don't you get it twisted. God is the head of this platform, and there are a lot of Christian-based podcasts that don't really go there. They don't really go there, but we're going to go there. We're going to go there because we're going to be real, raw, and relevant. And so I wanted to just introduce who I was, a little bit about that. Yeah, a little introduction. And you'll get to know me as we continue with our episodes. But tune in. I want you to like, I want you to comment, and I want you to subscribe. Most importantly, I want you to pray. I want you to pray. I want you to pray for us, because there is somebody that's going to watch our content that's going to be free. There's somebody that's going to scroll on this page, and they're going to get their deliverance, because your pastor got a boyfriend and ain't no deliverance going on in their church. Your pastor smokes crack and ain't nobody getting free. Your pastor might be living an alternative lifestyle and wonder why the folks is walking around here like zombies. And a lot of stuff going on behind these walls. But there is somebody that said, I'm done with the church building, but I ain't done with the YouTuberations. And they'll come and they'll see this podcast, and they'll get healed, and they'll get delivered, and they'll get set free. And ladies and gentlemen, that is the conclusion of episode 1, the introduction of me and Pinky. Show some respect to my co-hosts. Like, comment, subscribe. Tell your mama, tell your auntie, tell your daddy and your uncle about the Free Me Fridays. Until next time, stay free. For all you brands and companies that want to partner with the Free Me Friday podcast, I want you to go ahead and email us at the email that's on the screen right now. If you got wigs, if you got shoes, if you got bullhorns, and whatever you got going on and you want your company or your brand to be featured on the Free Me Friday podcast, hit us up. Me and Pinky are ready to work with you. Let's talk. Email us now. I could be your brand ambassador. Why not? Me, Jesus, and Pinky. Hit us up right now. Thank you kindly.